Thank you for tuning in to Malaïka, the talk show for African Christian women. Please stay with us for today's topic. Today we're talking about Christian faith and work life. And I have with me in studio Auntie Zods and Jackie and our beautiful Mama Audrey. Thank you so much for being with us as always.
It is my joy to be with you.
Thank you so much, Mama. And today we have with us a very special guest all the way from South Africa, but we will get to meet her later on in the show. And today, as we talk about the Christian faith and work life, I mean, we all want to thrive, don't we? But there should be borderline things there that we need to know about. So to stay tuned for that, don't touch that dial before we hear Jackie's overview. Jackie, we know in this world we're living in, there is always a race towards something, especially where work life is concerned.
Yes.
What does your overview have to say about this?
Okay, interesting topic. We've got work life and the Christian faith. So let's kick it off with a definition. So work life, it's a part of a person's life where they have a job or where they work. That's quite self-explanatory. But now, Christian women, many of them actually don't see that there has to be a balance there. And some of them don't realize that sometimes their work life affects the people closest to them, their families, their children, their husbands. Not sure though, but some people actually, as I read in an article, they hide their identity at work. And some offices are teeming with undercover agents or undercover Christians.
Undercover Christians.
Are you one of them? The article questions. An author who wrote a book entitled The Church in the Workplace, he says, many of the tools we use at church don't work in a circular environment. That's an interesting question. I'm sure we'll elaborate on that one later on. I also read an article of someone who really struggled in their Christian life as well as working. They had circles. They had a church circle, a family circle, business circle, and physical fitness circle. Good circles though, hey. But are they interlinked? Are they joined together? But for him, he struggled because they were very separate. Another article I read titled, My Work-Life Balance. And the main thing they spoke about was, do you live to work or do you work to live?
Yeah, that's it.
In this article, the person worked for a law firm and they noticed that in the law firm, there were lots of couches in partners' offices, offices, benches, chairs. People slept in the office. Blankets, exactly. Spare suits even, because they spent so many hours in the office and they slept in the office. To work to live now. The author said, I was amazed at how so many of my co-workers watched the clock. What time is it ending? You know, we need to leave now. Start packing before it's time to close off. And talking about the previous weekend, not like there's anything wrong with talking about the weekend, but, you know, emphasizing mainly about the weekend that's past, the weekend that's coming up, and taking very little time to actually do the work that you're supposed to do. And the author says this made them realize that their attitude actually reflected in their work. Unfortunately, this was actually Christians.
That's fair.
In the Bible, someone wrote a blog and it was titled, Jesus didn't teach us to juggle. Why did he say this? He said this mainly because in the ancient world, work life and family life were often integrated and intertwined. It says that families worked together for the family trade, whether commerce or whether agriculture. Jesus probably didn't have to leave the home when he did his work. It was only until the Industrial Revolution that people started to leave home and they started to work abroad. In closing, Mama Audrey, I'm sure there's lots to mention about the Bible. I won't dwell on that, but I'll leave that to you later on. So that's to end my overview.
Thank you so much for that,
My
Jackie.
pleasure.
And so, Auntie Zods, you're on the ground. You're in Southern Africa. So now what's happening there is, are they living to work or are they working to live?
That's an excellent question, because I think for the Christian circle, that's one of our biggest things that we need to really sit down and consider. Because there's so much pressure now coming from the world to excel, to achieve, to be somebody. You find that more and more couples are working, both mom and dad are working. Whereas in the past, mom would be a homemaker, and dad would join the workforce. But now, because things have become so expensive, the African economies are not doing well. So there's that reality as well, that because there's such demand and
There's a need for mom to work.
for mom to work, which is growing. But then now, what does she do? Especially for the woman, it's like it's a juggling all the time. Yes. It's amazing. Someone actually mentioned something which I found very funny. He says, dad will say, good night, everybody, I'm going to sleep.
Yes.
He goes to sleep.
Yeah.
Mom will say, good night, everybody.
Go to work.
No, I'm going to sleep.
Okay.
Then what she does is first she goes to pack the lunches for the next day.
That's true, yeah.
She checks if the kids are sleeping. She goes around sometimes even checking if the doors are locked. She does all this, and then an hour later, then she goes to sleep because there's so much demand on
She probably
woman.
says, I'm going to sleep 5 times. Okay, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
She goes
And then
into the
there's
kitchen.
something else that comes
Exactly.
up. So now, with all these pressures that are there, for many Christian couples, it becomes a very difficult line to draw. But I'm just going to give you a very beautiful testimony, which I thought would be useful. There's a young lady who's a professional. She's a Christian in our churches, and she was doing very well in her work. Then she had her first baby, and she felt that I really want to be a mother. I really want to be at home. I want to take care. So she went to her company and asked if they could give her a lesser title, lesser pay, so she can work half day. Which for me, I thought
Excellent.
was a very noble thing.
Lovely
but then it
testimony.
meant that the family can't have all the fancy things that everyone is looking for.
So what? But they
So-
got mom.
They've got mom. So I think for many Christians, this is exactly what we need to really look at. Then we have that coupled with now the woman is working, she's earning more. What happens with the finances? Who decides? Then it comes back to that tug of war we've spoken about, where the man feels that I'm the husband, I make all the decisions. She works, he gets the paycheck. So that strife is something that we always are juggling with. So, Rose, there it is. That's our Africa.
And definitely there we have it, as you say, Auntie Zod. So the dynamics are quite complex. And actually, that can be justified as we actually have a guest from Southern Africa, South Africa to be specific. Her name is Stella. She's a mother of 3. She's a pastor's wife and also a working professional. Thank you so much, Stella, for joining us on the show today. And so, Stella, with all these roles that you have, you're like a 3-in-1, even more, you know? Do you feel like working as a professional is limiting you from playing all these roles that you have in your life?
Rose, I must admit, it's not easy to carry out all the functions or the roles that you've mentioned, but it's not impossible at the same time. You know, I don't think that holding a job limits me in any way from being a good mother or a good wife to my husband, and it certainly doesn't limit me in terms of serving the Lord. I think in it all, I had to find a balance, you know, in my life where I looked at myself and I asked myself, what was most important? You know, what are my priorities? And in terms of that, being able now to organize myself and to spend the time that I have on what is important, invest in my family, invest in my children, and also be a support financially in the home. So I think whilst it sounds very difficult and it is very hard, it is also not impossible. It's something that can be done.
Stella, your husband is a full-time pastor and you actually bringing the salary constantly throughout the months. How have you handled finances? Because, I mean, for many people, that's a very big struggle, huh?
Rose, for me, it doesn't really matter what the source of income is, because whatever it is that I earn or my husband earns, we put together and we centralize it, and it becomes our income. And together we decide on how that money is going to be used. I think for me, it doesn't really matter, you know, the quantum of it. It doesn't really matter who's made more. What's important is that we as a family are able to accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves. And so I think the most important thing is obviously the budget, to make sure that we are able to live within the means that we have. And the second thing is also to be honest and to be transparent with one another, because it doesn't help having a budget, but also not being able to live according to how we have agreed we will allocate our resources. So I think that what's important is to be able to work together, to be able to be united in the decisions that we make in terms of how it is that we spend the money that we have. Besides that, I don't think there's any other issues in terms of being the one that works full time or being the one that, that contributes much into the home. What's important is that together we realize that we support each other in everything that we do.
And so, Mama Audrey, the dynamics have actually changed over time. Before, obviously, everything used to be so interlinked in terms of working together. But now the mom has to be there, the dad has to be there, this one all over. So now how can women actually then prioritize and manage effectively all their different roles without actually being flustered?
Listen, fortunately, the Lord has blessed women with a great potential, much capacity. Women can do many things. They are strong, they're equipped, they are organized. But whether we like it or not, definitely it will have to come to choices, to making choices. They won't be able to have the best of both worlds, to be able to enjoy their kids as much as they would like to, and to be able to get the benefits from the work. It all comes down to choices. But what's good in the case of Stella is that we can feel that her and her husband are united in it. And already that element of unity brings some kind of protection and security to the kids. And obviously, I'm sure she must have some help and to be able to get home, and most of the things are done, because if you've got to work, to cook, to clean, to wash, to put the clothes on the line, to do the dishes,
The list is endless.
it's not possible. And especially that today, in the world that we live in a very competitive world.
Yes.
And unless you give 100% at your job, at your workplace, you are most likely to have somebody replacing you, and there are hundreds of people waiting for your job.
Exactly.
So you have to invest yourself. You can't hide, you can't go there and think you're going to, just do the minimum. It doesn't work today. So obviously when any woman working gets home must be already quite exhausted, quite tired, and having to cope with kids shouting, with kids playing. You can't stop them playing, you can't stop them from shouting, you can't stop them from making stupid things. It's life.
The one you hear often is, "Mommy, I'm hungry." I'm sure we all hear that all the time.
Yeah, but in fact, they are always hungry.
True. Born hungry.
So definitely, some do not have choices. They have to. But if we can make like the testimony of Zodwa, she's just, Auntie Zod spoke about that woman who chose to go half-time. I know another woman in the church in Paris. She's a professional, and she realized that her work was taking so much of her time, and it was taking all her energy, and she couldn't commit herself to the activities of the church. And she decided that she's going to downgrade. And even though she was so much appreciated in her work, she was working for a huge bank, and they were waiting to put her in charge of the whole section. She said, no, I would rather downgrade, but I want to be free, be able to go at 5, and be able to participate in my church life, because it's not only the family life, there's also the church life, and there's a work life. So as that person that Jackie mentioned, how many laughs can we have? The physical life, we need to have some fitness, so to be able to do all that, to pray, to read our Bibles, to spend time with our kids, I mean, where do we start and where do we end? We have to be able to sacrifice some things.
Mama, you mentioned that there needs to also be some sort of unity between couples. But there's another problem that's arisen in Southern Africa where unity is being separated because of finances. The woman is working, earning more, and the husband isn't working or is earning less. Submission is an issue, or there's struggles there, they are not understanding each other. How can you encourage such a woman?
I mean, all depends if the husband is not working because he's lazy.
Yeah, that's a different story.
Problem.
That's another story. But if there is no job, what can he do? I know a brother in Africa, he was working for a company, and they wanted him to start doing things that were not clear. Like maybe declaring false figures or whatever. And obviously, as a Christian, he couldn't accept that. But then what do? On one side, you've got your family to feed. Kids that they don't know this thing of cheating or not cheating. At 7, they are hungry.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm hungry.
Then you've got the rent to pay, you've got electricity, you've got all that. And then you've got the job, and you know well that they don't need you because they've got many people probably better qualified than you to do the job. So what do? So that was a choice that has got to come from a conviction.
Okay.
It can't be a religious choice. It's got to be from a conviction of the Holy Spirit in your heart. You live, or you do, you wait, you're patient, you tell you stand, you let them know that you don't agree, or whatever the situation is. But it's not an easy choice because you've got realities of life that are there. So at the end of the day, when you look at the situation in Africa, when you look at the number of unemployment,
Yes.
which is huge,
It's high.
so if one of the two can work, it's fine. But then it's normal that the one who doesn't work steps in to do what
Sorry,
the
out of
one who works.
curiosity, Mama, what happened to him? Did he leave?
I don't know what he
work?
did, but
You're not sure.
that is he had to make a decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when he asked an advice, and we say, you know, you must go according to the conviction of your heart. It's easy for me to give an advice, but then I'm not the one with that fully on the
Exactly.
table. And I'm not the one
Exactly.
doing things which are not clear in the sight of the Lord.
Yeah.
So I really believe that we have to make, you know, choices and come to a place where we are a team.
Yes,
We
exactly.
must realize that
Exactly,
as a husband and a
exactly,
wife,
yes.
we are a team. And even children must step in, the older children, and help.
And support.
I'm not talking about children labor.
Yes.
But they must step in and help where they can. You know, the bigger child looks after the baby. But it's a family, it's a team. This is where it's sad to see that the culture sort of looks down on a husband who is a support to his wife and who is a blessing to his home. Because if the culture looks down on that, you must be sure that Jesus will give you a grade for that, will give you score points in the
Exactly.
eyes of Jesus. And if you are that kind of husband, you are likely to be given responsibilities in the church so that, because this is what the Lord says, when you are running your house properly, then you can expect to work for the Lord and be entrusted responsibilities in the things of God.
Yes. So Auntie Zod's Mama Audrey mentions the men that will be able to step in when the need arises. But in Southern Africa, we know there's a lot of cultural disputes there. So when it comes to the Christian faith and work life, where does the man actually come into the picture?
I think it's a bit confusing at the moment, especially because the woman is now in the same boardroom as the men. And now you look at the woman, she's vulnerable, she's gentle. But where women actually struggle now is now I'm in the boardroom, I'm surrounded by men, so my character needs to change. I need to take the boxing gloves out, I need to be tough, I need to be a manager, I need to command respect. So as Jackie said, then women struggle now because at work she has to be something. At home she has to submit. In church she's a sister in the Lord. So it's to juggle all that is quite
It's a
hectic.
challenge, yes.
Exactly. And then the other thing I really would like to mention is work ethic for Christians. And this is something I discovered, which I'm not proud of. Because it turns out that many Christians are very good at serving in the church. They're very reliable. They would like to be seen to be the spiritual person. But when you ask for at their boss's place, how is so-and-so? They are the ones who are always late. They don't speak well at work.
Take sick leave.
They're lazy. They
Take sick leave.
always on leave. And even worse so, where a Christian is working for a Christian brother. The expectation now is that, oh, but you are my brother.
Exactly.
You should understand. Really, I need to take that time off. Oh, by the way, there's a trip. I need to do this. I need to do that.
Special meeting tonight, I can't stay.
You see, so now the testimony in our workplace is very weak. And you'll find that now promotions are coming and you're not counted because you always have an excuse. So somewhere as Christians, that testimony in our work ethic, we need help with that.
And as Auntie Zods has spoken, Christians need help. I mean, we're supposed to be the light that shines, but now we're actually under a lampshade. They actually can't see us. What encouragement is there for Christians?
I mean, again, you know, it's the gospel that we hear that will bring reality in our lives. And very often Christians, they think that, like Auntie Zod said, in church you need to be, what is important is spiritual things.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it.
But material things, it's not that important.
Or practical things.
Exactly, practical things are not very important. So in the job, I can do, but it's not that important
Yeah.
because, you know, these are the things that's going to pass away.
Okay.
But when we look at the Bible, when we see examples like Daniel, how that young man was still, 16 years old? He was brought to Babylon, and he didn't have a father there, and a mother, nobody to watch after him, nobody to see what he's doing. He could say, oh, wow, I'm free now, I can do
Exactly. I'm free to
anything.
do what I want.
But, you know, he lived up to his conviction,
Yes.
and he took a stand for what he believed, for what he knew was the right thing that his God expected from him. And it was such a testimony that he didn't stop getting raised,
Yes.
because this is people that the world appreciate. In fact, I know many Christians, which are exactly the other opposite of what Auntie Zod said, that their boss love them so much because they're working so well, because they are honest, they don't steal, they don't cheat, they don't lie, that they are just, they would give them anything.
Yes.
When we look at Joseph, in the prison, he was steadfast. He was honest. He lived up to his conviction. He was a model in prison.
Yes.
From prison to the palace.
Unfortunately, Mama, I know there's so much to be said, but I have to
Already?
ask for your final
Already.
word. But in that, you were saying he's an example. So now maybe in your final word, how can you now encourage Christians to be an example in their workplaces without seeming like they're Bible bashing people?
Ah, yeah.
Exactly.
Their life
Yeah.
is what should be speaking more than anything else. And I think that there's this verse of scripture that says, in whatever you do it as unto the Lord.
Yes.
And also Jesus said something very interesting. He said, if you do what you're supposed to do, why should we thank you? Why should you be praised? You just did what you were supposed to do. So you are an unfaithful, unnecessary servant because you're doing what you were supposed to do. So whatever we're supposed to do as Christians, not only we should be doing that, but we should go an extra mile for wherever the Lord leads us, how the Lord can bring us to be a light, because we are not supposed to shine in the church because there's already light in the church, but we are supposed to shine in the world, and the workplace is a great place to shine, and what a way to reach others. Not by Bible bashing them, but for our lives speaking louder and for our life to challenging them. So I think that there is so much opportunity for us Christians in whatever we do. It can be, you know, often in the shop, I go to a shop and maybe the girl did a mistake. She charged me too less. You can easily say to yourself, the Lord is blessing me. You know? But no, that's an opportunity that the Lord's giving you. I'm sorry, ma'am, I think you gave the wrong figure. Can you please check it again? Oh, thank you so much. You know, in whatever we do, we've got to have the fear of the Lord and to know that we are ambassadors for Christ. And in the workplace, 8 to 10 hours a day, we are able to help people, to advise people, to encourage people. But all that is cancelled if our life, if our walk doesn't match the talk.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think there's a great opportunity, Christians, to be a blessing wherever they are, the same way Joseph was a blessing in the prison, Daniel was a blessing in Babylon, to be a blessing, to shine for Jesus, and that is the greatest way for doors to open, for after that, for us to share our testimony.
Exactly, Mama. Thank you so much for that, Mama. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much to the team. As always, you guys were wonderful. And viewers, there you have it. Let us shine. We were made to shine for the Lord in all circumstances, you know. So let's take advantages of the opportunities. We don't have to shine in church alone. So we thank you for being with us once again, and we hope you can join us again next time. But keep in touch. We are on Facebook. You'll find the link at the bottom of the screen, and you can continue to watch on YouTube as on the link at the bottom of the screen as well. And so until next time, goodbye and God bless you.